Hi, everybody. I'm here. It's 1:00. Hi, Dr. Gail. Hi, Libra Lady. Hi, Kathy G. And Ann, Annette, and Miriam. Um, I'm going to wait a little bit to let people come in the broadcast, but just for my own amusement, I decided to see what the stones thought about this topic of the fairies and the earth energies and Findhorn. And what I got is it's very blessed and it's going to bring some ultimate radiance. It's something that we're getting very connected to and can learn a great deal from. We just need to stay grounded. And that's the whole object of working with the elementals is staying grounded. That we're learning from spiritual lessons from the past. And we've got more will be coming forward from this. And it's a clarity for us that's really coming straight out of our past. It's going to be something a lot of people are going to recognize themselves in and that their life's been built around. So that's kind of where it is. Now I try to get clever and find some lovely pictures of fairies. And today my little pick up a picture and show it on the screen thing wouldn't work. And after half an hour I said, apparently they don't want us to see them. But I'm going to explain Findhorn because I think it's one of the best documented places about this kind of life. It's up in the north of England. Well, it's actually in Scotland. It's on a moray, on an inlet moray, like the Loch Ness monster. It's Moray Loch, is where it is. And I thought it had been there a lot longer. When I started reading this stuff yesterday, and looking some stuff up, it's the way it formed was quite by accident. The Caddy family, the husband worked at a hotel right near where what is now Findhorn, and there was an economic downturn in 1962, so they let him go, and his wife who worked there, and then there was another woman who worked there named Eileen, and they said that she could come with them because she had nowhere to go. And they moved into a caravan with their 3 sons. So there was 6 people living in this little caravan. Caravans are like trailers. If you've not seen one in England, they have lots of parks with them. They moved to this caravan park right near the hotel because they didn't have gas to go anywhere either. And Cold Toes, it's snowing where Cold Toes is. It's not snowing here, thank God. Anyway, make a long story short, even with the kind of government substance base they gave them, they couldn't make a living. And so he found this old piece of plot that was at the end of a farmer's plot of land. And it was all sandy. And the farmer said, no one's been ever able to get anything to grow there. And he said, well, we got to try doing something. So they got some seeds and started trying to grow plants. And this is then Dorothy, who is his wife, she got the first message, and she said it was like a feeling on the wind. She knew something was with her. It was telling her about how to handle the seeds and timings and what to treat them with, how to water them and take care of them. So she went ahead with it. As she said, she did it with an open heart and mind because, they were at the end of, it was rough times for them. And they ended up, within 3 years, growing 40-pound cabbages on this ground and turning it into a lush, verdant green garden. And out of that garden came a book, and it was said, it was by 1967, so about 5 years later, they'd written a book called God Speaks to Me, and how that's how they first viewed it. And then they learned it was the elementals. They learned it was the fairies. Um, and they learned to listen to the spirits that were there, and they ended up having this lush garden. And what happened after that was there's just a dynamic growth in the 70s and 80s of people coming there saying, how can you do this sustainable farming? And that's what they were working with. They were working with recycling everything, not wasting anything, using everything they had. There's a picture of them with a cabbage that was a huge cabbage, and it was growing out of the snow when it shouldn't have been able to even still be alive. But it's Findhorn is the whole area is now Findhorn. It was originally that just this little farm plot and this little caravan on it, and now it's got a learning center. It's got all this stuff, and irony of ironies, and they created a foundation which they work with the UN about. And let me see, I can show you this again. If you're going to want to go to their website, that's where it is, and you can see how it works. But they've worked out things with the UN. They have people all over the world now that are trained in what they know how to do. But the irony was, in 1983, they ended up buying the hotel who had fired him, and that's a big part of their learning center. And they call it They call the thing they do through the UN. It's called Global Eco Village Network. And if you go to that website, they have a list of all the they have them all over the world, every place that they are. But in the U.S., a lot of the states have someone who's been trained in this. That's their email contact. I did write to her yesterday and say I'd like to have her come talk to us sometime about what they do. They bring back the Findhorn model and relate it to whatever their agricultural peculiarities are. Because I know in our state you can grow one thing in one part and nothing like that further north, but they have all the ways they tie into it. And it's called, and Findhorn's won several awards, including one from the UN for the Habitat for Best Practices. And somebody asked this question of me today. Is there a grain of truth in the Grimm's fairy tales? More than a grain of truth. There's a book that's another fascinating book. And if you watched when I did the 9 Candles with Kim Carey, she said she'd never done anything with fairies or any of the elementals at all, hadn't fallen into her bailiwick. But then someone suggested that for her book club, they read The Secret Lives of Fairies. And a couple days ago, I ran across it when I was looking this stuff up. I pulled it over as a Kindle book, and I've read about half of it. It's absolutely fascinating. And it's the story of one woman's life and how, as a small child, she was up in Scotland. A lot of the stuff happens in England. They're kind of more wired to this than we are, but they've been there longer. She went out in the hills with her grandmother, and I don't know if you've ever seen a stile. It's a little bridge sort of thing they build over the fences, because in England you have your own personal property, but you have to leave certain trails open, and that's what some of the ley line research came from, because those were the straight tracks that. This all falls back together, guys. This guy named Watkins, who really sort of began to follow the ley lines in the early 1900s, but they had always had in England this thing where they had these walking trails. And I know when I was there in 95 with my husband visiting family members, we were out in a little tiny village outside of Dover, and we were staying in a house that was built when Queen Anne was Queen of England. That's a long time ago. It was a really pretty bed and breakfast, and the woman handed us the flyer to walk on the trail. So we took Patrick out walking, and we went over some of these stiles. You go up them, you go over the fence, and you come down the other side. And I met a lot of people when we were at bed and breakfast who were walking across the country. because they have these beautiful hiking trails. Anyway, this woman's story was she went with her grandmother. They went over the stile, went up on the hills, did search for some things her grandmother wanted to get out of the forest. And when they came back to where the stile had been, it wasn't there. And the little girl said, Grandma, how are we going to get home? She said, oh, it's okay. She said, it's just my fairy friends. They're being little tricksters. She said, we'll just sit here in the shade of this tree. And she said she sat in the tree with the shade with her grandmother, and they watched the bridge reappear. And her grandmother says, okay, now we're going to go home. And she said she was like 4 or 5 at the time. And for a long time, she sort of forgot it, like a lot of people do, because like they don't want to be called crazy. But anyway, then she goes on to how she went and lived a more normal life. She lived in suburban areas. And then how eventually the fairies called her back. I have a story about one of my sister-in-laws. We were outside of York in a little place called Huddleston. And it's a little village they lived in. And they lived in a weaver's cottage that had been there since before the American Revolution. But it had all been fixed up. It had giant, thick walls. It was cold outside, but you weren't cold. They had one stove to heat the whole place. And my sister-in-law, when I got there, I had a bad chest infection. I had a really bronchitis. I had it really badly. And she said, oh, I'll fix something up for you. And I'm like, okay. And Waddy, my brother-in-law, said, you can trust her. You can trust her. She knows what she's doing. And so I went and she came in that night. She said, drink half this bottle tonight and then drink the other half in the morning and you'll be right as rain. And she'd had to go to the pharmacist to get something to mix in it. But I said, what is the rest of it? She said, oh, that's why I love living up on this hill. It's all the things that my people have been foraging out of the forest since time began. I mean, her family had been there. Forever. Forever. However long Huddleston had been there. And so I drank it, and it didn't taste bad. She put something sweet in it, so it didn't taste too bad. And I drank half the bottle. And for the first time in 3 nights, I slept all night without having to wake up and cough and feel miserable. And then the next morning when I got up, I drank the rest of the medicine and then went down and had breakfast with them. And she was right. By 3 p.m, it was completely gone. And I said, what was in that? And she said, oh, this and that, and what we do, she says, what we do. And she was one of the, in her area, the wise old woman who could mix things up out of the plants, that she knew the forest that well. And I asked her, and she said, oh, they lead you to where you need to be. And then she never told me who they were. So, so I've seen how this works, and over there, so you can feel walking through the woods there. You can feel things that are different. You can feel it when you're on the hiking trails. Of course, if you go to a place like Stonehenge, you definitely feel the energetic changes. But the way some of the stories I ran across on the internet, I ran across a thing from David Furlong, who has been a healer and a teacher in England for over 40 years. And he goes, many traditional cultures have used the sense of the elementals. And that I knew because I know in Japan, in the Shinto shrines, there's a little temple that's before you go over the bridge to go into where you burn the stuff and do all that. There's this little temple where you can leave food for the elementals to have. And they're always dedicated to earth, wind, air, and fire. So it's just like our elementals, and that's how their culture recognizes them. And those places are called kami, Kami. And let's see. Okay. And if you have any questions you want to ask me about what I've run across, because I'm just really starting to scratch the surface. But what David Furlong says is they attach themselves through your auric field. So if you're opening up and you're feeling okay, they'll attach through that. And he said the way to build a rapport to them is to talk to them. If you sense they're there but you can't see them yet, they can make themselves known to you once you talk to them enough. And I'm talking about attaching to good energy. There are a lot of legends, and this is where that question about is there a grain of truth in Grimm's fairy tales? Yeah, these guys can do great things for you, or they can make your life really hard. And so that part of the Grimm's fairy tale was absolutely true. And at the time they were writing those fairy tales, those were originally written as stories for adults. And they really did prove that there was a lot of malice. There was a lot of malice in that world anyway at that point in time. Just the human vibration was that low. And that's what the other things that the elementals told me when I met with them is they had to go away because humans became so tied to the physical world that they couldn't appear up here. And they said, except to some people, and obviously they've been doing it at Findhorn. And this, Furlong was talking about he had a friend who had developed a relationship with a salamander. And salamanders are fire. And salamanders are like salamanders and dragons and those guys, okay? And the guy was in London riding on the tube and was all by himself. And it was a woman. And she was riding on the tube on a car all by herself late at night. And this very aggressive looking individual got in the car. And she turned and called on her salamander friend to come help protect her. And the next station, the guy got off the train like, he'd seen a ghost or something. She figures it was her friend coming to help save her. And so I guess they can be useful that way as for protection. And David Furlong has said as he opened his life up, more and more different spirits, different entities came to him, and he learned how to be friends with them. If you go online, you can actually find pictures that people have taken of fairies, and usually they're taken accidentally. They don't even know they're on there till they go home and they look at the film. But in the case of two little girls in the early 1900s in York, they came home and they kept telling their parents they were meeting these little people. And their father was like, first, don't exaggerate. And then finally, he mentioned it to somebody, and the guy gave him a sealed little brownie camera and said, oh, I'm glad you got your salamanders back, Lauren, because they are helpful. They kill insects. But the father gave the little girl the sealed brownie camera. So, and what little girls in 1917 are going to know how? I mean, it's not like Photoshop now, But anyway, they went and took pictures, and there's some charming pictures of these little people about this tall climbing up on their laps and holding their hands. The girls were 11 and 12. And eventually the man who'd given the father the camera took it back, printed the pictures, said, oh my God, what we have here. And those are some of the earliest pictures of people with them. There's also a lot of people, some of them, they said they were fairies. They looked like orbs, but I don't know if it's energy you're talking about. I don't know how you could tell the difference, except they look more orby to me than fairy-like. Anyway, so and a lot of the stuff they touch is the basic stuff for us, like weather, like soil, and those are going to be the earth sprites, and sometimes the air sprites when you're doing gardening. But yeah, here's one. It's the same here in Finland, to leave food for the sauna and the barn gnomes. Cool. And does anybody else have just a question today? I will tell you what's the further adventures of where we're going. I did get in contact with Tim Walter, and he will probably be on my station a week from this coming Thursday, because I'm trying to schedule him before Thanksgiving gets here. And of course, they don't have our Thanksgiving in England, but he didn't get back to me when I first wrote to him because he got COVID, and he's still recovering from that. So if he can stay clear of the COVID or wake up from the COVID, that seems to be more of the problem these days. I'll have him on, and this is the one I'm going to show. Yeah, we found right after, when I first started working with the elementals, I'd never seen a salamander here. I used to live on a house, and we had a pink one, beautiful little pink one that lived on our front porch. But I hadn't seen any around where I live now, and I found two since I started talking with them. So I don't know if they're sending me messengers or what they're doing, but what they've told me is that we need to learn how to work with them, because they're going to be how we're going to find our way out of some of our difficulties that we're facing with climate and other things, because they have the wisdom to teach us. I mean, anybody can grow a 40-pound cabbage out of a piece of sandy soil. They got something going for them. And there's a whole series of books, if you look Findhorn up, that the two women wrote about being at Findhorn. And one of the sons of Caddy, the guy who was the father of the clan, he started a center in Canada where they do the same sort. They do teaching things. Okay. Do you talk to all of them as a collective, or do you talk to the fairies separately from, say, the gnomes? Well, when I met them the first time, they were all there to speak to me as we're elementals and we need to be brought forward. Since then, like I said, I found the salamanders. I found myself reading some things, and there's several different ways you can become aware of things around you. In my case, a lot of times I'll hear about something I've never heard about before, and then for the next 3 weeks, I'll just be bombarded out of YouTube, out of documentaries I run across. Hi, Carol Ann. About they get thrown into my face. I'll be listening to some talk show on Sirius XM, and they'll go, it's a show that doesn't ever do topics like this, and all of a sudden they'll go into a topic that has something to do about what I work with. And of course, I find all sorts of different things. Of course, I read a lot of people who are a lot of fun to read, and they'll have an experience, and they'll say, I've never told anyone this. And there's a reason they haven't told anyone this, because they don't think, okay, I'm sorry. Ley lines are energetic line. It's an energetic pulse that comes from the center of the earth. So they go through what's ever between the center of the earth and when they come to the top. They are also under the ocean. And thank you, Melissa Miller. I'll put that up. And I've been told that the legend is that the whales keep the ley lines straight from in the ocean. Findhorn has a YouTube channel. Very good. Good. Those would be fun, because those are the people who just clicked into the energy and brought it forward. And, they went from living hand to mouth in 1962 to, by the year 2000, having a whole foundation that's internationally based, training people all across the world. So I saw them, a couple interviews with them on YouTube, but it wasn't on their channel. And I did Google in Findhorn in YouTube, and it didn't take me there. So on YouTube, let's see. But it's more a matter of getting to understand and feel grounded in your own vibrations. And they just seem like, that's interesting. A humpback whale arrived in Maui waters the other week. Those who know their time for arrival were freaked out. In other words, they were breaking the pattern. Yeah, it's it's another way for us to connect, that connects us to our planet and our earth and what we're grounded on, and that's what we need to be focused on. And we need to be able to understand how each of us can work with soil. I like, they were talking about how people find working in gardens soothing, and I read an article that came across my CNN newsfeed about how there's microorganisms in dirt that just having them on your body, they work like depressants, and that's why they think that that's good for people to work with the different plants. So are there any elements you want to know, like trolls? Actually, trolls get a bad rap. Trolls are like I don't know if you've ever watched a show about mining. In the mines, they'll hear what they call Tommy knockers, and there's something that's beating away further in the mine. And when the people in the mine hear that, they get out because they know it's a warning. A lot of the things, if you read those troll stories, they made them into the bad guys. But I mean, unless they're internet trolls, and that's a whole nother critter. And I don't think they're the ones we're talking about. But trolls were protecting people about, they were always under the bridge and stuff. They're always in places that could be terrifying for people. If you've ever seen the musical Into the Woods, they talk about all that and about how what it means when you go into the woods and you deal with these elementals. You're facing all the things you haven't wanted to face, and you're having to deal with your fears. And that's really a lot of fairy tales are really teaching us, are parables about dealing with your darker side or your shadow work or whatever you want to call it. And we can take anything. No, the 7 dwarfs were dwarves. I think 7 dwarfs were dwarfs. There are, in different countries have different legends. The Irish have some real pieces of work in their supernatural creatures, except they're not really supernatural. They're part of the nature of what's there. That if you've ever read about silkies, they look like seals, and when they unzip their skin, they're beautiful women. And they will come in and they will kidnap men and take them to the sea and drown them. Okay. This is a tough one for me, Marie, and that's why cartomancy, I'm sorry. Because I didn't ask for them, they found me. So, and they found me because I work with rocks and because I understand the rocks. And the rocks, I think somebody asked me one time, you talk about the rocks like they're alive, and I do. They definitely do have an earth energy. They have an existence energy. They have a power around them. But how do you call elementals in? They said, okay, I'll read you one of the descriptions. Yeah, they could be very bloodthirsty in Germanic fairy tales. Okay, this is the description from Dorothy that she put in that book, I Speak with God. The first message came to Dorothy. Dorothy's way was a feel in the wind. It was the essence, and to be with one in this essence, teaching us the connection to nature and the realm. It was all about feeling into the web of life, gently, respectfully, and with an open heart and mind. Though Dorothy's ability to listen to Findhorn Gardens went on to produce seemingly impossible things, like the 40-pound cabbages. Fairies appear in a multitude of ways. They're generally tied to nature. So I guess you don't stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and find them. And if you so wish, you can build a complete trust with these beings from these realms. You will find specific elemental guides that will come and work with you and be with you the rest of your life. And that's by allowing yourself to be open and being willing to connect with things. Okay. And a lot of it is that people aren't listening. I mean, that's really what happened. And now the world's slowed down and we're shifting. And as our consciousness gets greater and you get into 4D and 5D, you'll be able to see them easily. Okay. How do cats play in the role of fairy tales? It's the difference between a pet and a familiar. Yeah, a familiar is someone that is, it's taken the form of a cat, but it's an elemental energy that helps the witch. And they're like a personal friend. They're not like my cat who says, "Where's the food?" Oh, wrong person. Shift it. Okay. Is it Ireland they don't build in fairy areas? Yeah, Marie, I know a funny story about that because my parents' families. Well, my mother's family was from Western Ireland, and there was a fairy ring, and when they came in, they said, "We're going to build the road straight through here," and all the villagers said, "Nah, that's probably not a great idea." And they said, "We're going to do it anyway." So they went and they built the road right smack dab through what they had considered a fairy ring area. And after 10 years, they tore it up and moved the road so it went around it. It had more accidents on that spot than anywhere in Ireland. And this is out in the middle of nowhere. So, for things to get timed that way, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, they don't like you trespassing. They're pretty protective of their stuff. Okay. Witch heal wounds. Is there such a thing? Once we were studying about them in that same room, little lights appeared around a small wound on my finger. Well, if they were really little, then they're probably sprites. And that's an air energy. And air would carry energy to be able to heal. Mm-hmm. Just like swords can cut, swords can heal. Air energies are like the equivalent of swords in tarot. They also, water sprites and stuff tend to be near water. So I would say it was an air energy. And that's just my best guess from my total and vast knowledge of this stuff, which is getting more total and vast. It's 66 of you today. Thank you. Well, keep looking for them, Cartomancy. You live in a part of Dallas where you should be able to find them because you got some kind of open spaces, a little greener. I live in Concrete City. That's why when they sent me the gold dragonfly, the day I was saying, I don't think I want to go on YouTube and tell people I've been talking to dragons. I got in my car to go to the post office, and besides my car hovering was a completely gold dragonfly. And this is not a place that should have a dragonfly in the first place because it's kind of a lot of asphalt. We have trees and greenery. I mean, it's not like we're completely devoid of it, but nothing that would have dragonflies. I was used to dragonflies when I went to summer camp, and they used to be on the edge of the lake, and I love them. I love dragonflies. So just go out and open yourself up and keep your aura clear so they can visit. They can visit. Okay. Okay, Muldoon. I visited Newgrange. Oh, yes. When I went to Ireland. It's a very ancient, if you guys don't know anything about Newgrange, go look it up. At one time of the year when the sun comes up, it shoots light directly down this thing to the end of the tunnel. There's some question about Newgrange has never not been there. I mean, it's like goes back way. And so at one point or another, if it was a place where they were keeping bodies or was like a burial site, they can't find it, but it's absolutely a magnificent thing to look at. And there was a documentary that I watched a year and a half ago, and it was a guy who went around to all of the stone sites, all the stone circles. Stonehenge is just one of many stone structures that are over there. And this guy drove across Ireland, and he visited Newgrange because he considered that a colossal construction of the time. It's wonderful. It's wonderful things. Thank you, Nia. Okay, here. I knew a woman in Albuquerque who had a lovely dedicated section in her yard to her fairies, planted small height leafy plants, and never moved the area. There are people who do that. And they're saying if you go out and you just sit on the porch and talk to your plants, you'll see them start to shake even if there's not a wind. And that's the other energies that are connected to them that are between our plane and the plane they hang out on, or the dimension they hang out on. Okay, where are we going? Engel has apparently been to Newgrange also. Okay. My mother toured places in Ireland. Her grandfather and grandmother were both from there, and she brought an entity home. That can happen. The ghost that hit me when I was 17, I carried parts of him. I mean, I could see him. I knew when he was around. And finally, I found a book about how to get rid of him. So he now happily resides in a dorm room at SMU. Yes, they can look very butterfly. They can look very much like a butterfly. Okay, and I don't know. I'm not sure what this means, but I won't post it. Yes, I see them moving around a lot. So Roxanne sees them. I think my family was attacked. I think attached, not attacked to them, and never knew or mentioned. And that's true. My mother's psychic gift was that she could see death. She never told me about seeing anything else. But I do know a couple of examples where she thought someone was going to die. And I think she saw it all the time. And I think that that's why she was so opposed to me doing anything like this. Although at the end of her life, she gave up and she was happy. Attached, right? Okay, Roxanne. Well, it may have added to her. The energy was draining on her, and it can add to their dementia. But also, a lot of times when people are fading from our world and they're living in the in between zone, they can see things the same way children can. Oh, good. When she landed in the hospital, Eliza sent it home. Thank you. You can get rid of them. Michelle, this summer, I had 2 different dragonflies. One landed on my chest and stayed for several minutes. And then I had another one that landed on my shoulder. And he also stayed for several minutes. Yeah, dragonflies, in case you haven't seen in my upper corner, that's a dragonfly connected to a crystal. That's my spirit animal for my business. Oh, okay. This is nice. Uh, Alma, the lady who designed the garden, who does all my artwork, um, she has dragon. She lives in Florida, and she had dragonflies that used to follow her out to her post office box and follow her back home to go inside. And finally, one of her neighbors said, "I've never seen anyone followed by a dragonfly before." And she just kind of laughed. She's like, "I'm fine." And this one's nice. You've changed my energy. I was apprehensive when I came here. You know, it's a lot. There's a lot of law of attraction going on here, guys. The more you image them as something, that's what they can become. But they can also be a real help to you. And I think it's kind of nice to know that there's this whole army of beings waiting until more of us can get our act together and recognize and deal with them. Yeah, there's okay. In Ireland they're called leprechauns, and in England they're called something else, and in you go to France and they've got another name. Every country has their own names for them. And then I had a friend who lived in an old area of Denver, and I finally asked her. I said, "What the hell's in your apartment?" And by the second night I was staying there, because I could hear something ringing little bells around the living room where I was sleeping on an air mattress. Um, and she said, "Oh, that they were in," and she took me around the property so I could see it more. The place had been built in like the 30s or 40s, but and the units were really kind of quite nice, big courtyards and things. But one of her neighbors warned her that they had pudwudgies, and pudwudgies are the Native American equivalent of leprechauns, and they can be tricksters. I have a friend in Dallas who grew up playing with fairies. Is there a connection with Dallas? There's spots near White Rock Lake that I would have no doubt are, and there's also an arboretum that they built off three very very wealthy people from that made a lot of money here, gave them all this land, and it's right near White Rock Lake. Also, the if you've ever seen White Rock Club Soda, it has a woman that looks very much like, she's not a mermaid. She's got legs and everything. She's wigs, and she's dipping down in the water because White Rock Lake, there's a company attached to it that used to make club sodas, and that was based on a myth about a woman who would appear in the middle of the lake in a rock. I don't know why. I mean, a lot of things happen in Dallas, and I am absolutely clueless as to why they happen. But I think that they can be anywhere. Okay, here's another dragonfly story. I usually don't see them, but one came close to me when I got out of my car at the grocery store. Good. We don't have lots of dragonflies here. That's why it was so weird for me to see one, but apparently they do in Washington. And that's one of the things that they said to me when I said, "Why did you pick me to be?" I've got a nice YouTube channel. I have a lot of lovely people I speak with. But they told me the reason they did is because as a child, and this is true, I had this big, fat, thick anthology of myths around the world. And it had all these kinds of critters in it. Mythologic ones, the ones that were part of traditions. I have a really good working knowledge of pretty much all over the world. They had a section on Native American, which I think was kind of stingy, because the Native Americans have continued to work with the spirit elements in their dancing and their ceremonies and things. And I didn't think they did such a hot job on them. But I've known some people in the tribes that still are attached to their tribal roots, and they have all the same kind of folks with their, it's the same energy, it's the same folks trying to do the same things. And yeah, I don't think I think they can be tricksters, but I don't think, Lauren says, yeah, Lauren thought the same thing. We're going to White Rock. Dallas's only water source in the early 1950s when they had a drought. That's why we have all these giant lakes built around us now. I was informed, I used to always say there was never a natural lake in Texas, but apparently in far, far east Texas, there is something that passes for a natural lake. But that's it, guys. Think about how big this state is. The only reason we have the water we have, it's got to either come from the sky, or in the Austin area, they use a lot of aquifer water. But nobody knows exactly where the aquifer water comes from and whether it's being replenished to a correct degree. So, okay. Yeah, that's another thing you can do. There are things called fairy houses, and you can put them down on the ground, and for them to eat. And you can put out. Radley Valentine used to talk about going out for walks, and he'd see a garden that he thought looked particularly splendid, and he'd go put a little piece of chocolate, because they like chocolate apparently. I'd make sure it wasn't too close to my front door and drawing ants, but okay. Oh, Michelle, I hope you get feeling better. Everybody send a little love and light to Michelle. She's not feeling good. It's what's going on in the planets right now as much as anything, Michelle. Or you just ran into a germ, but cold tubs. They do have dragonflies in Alaska, I'm sure. I felt very connected to dragonflies as long as I can remember. In the later part of the summer, my yard is full of them. They have rainbow colors. They are gorgeous. And one of the reasons that I use the dragonfly is because they're born on the water, and then they do a complete transmutation, and then they live in the air where we think, and they reflect all the colors of the rainbow. And they're very crystalline. They look very much like many of the crystals I work with have little butterflies in them. Let's see. Here you stood a whistle of an elf. They do. I have a collection of spirit meanings collected from various sources. Here's one. A time where the magic and mystery of life are reawakening. And that's kind of where we are. And they are, it is, we're all reawakening. And if you watch the show I did with Ann Perry, she talked about how we're on the shoulder. Once October hits, you start thinking about the next year. And so we're going from the 6th year that we're in now, which is, when I say 6 year, 2, add the 2, the 0, the 2, and the 2. That makes 6. Next year it'll be 7 year, because you got the 2, the 0, the 2, and the 3, and the 5 and the 2 is 7. And very different energy. Let me see if that's still in my slides. No, it's not. She left me, and I'll keep it. I think I'm going to store some graphics I can get. But she set up the wheel with the 9 points and each year and what the energy is in that year. But 6 is hearth and home, and trying to get comfortable in your home, trying to get things settled. Needless to say, 2021 was a 5 year, and that's 5 is freedom or chaos. And that's what people had to choose. Am I going to deal with this, or am I going to live in chaos? And then we went into a year where everybody's trying to reestablish their home and their base. And next year is going to be a spiritual and an analytical year, but it's a real positive kind of energy to have around you. Yep, Eliza, I think meditating's really important for people. But one of the things I think the elementals were concerned about was we were spending so much time talking about ETs and expecting things to come from outer space and hanging on to angels. And they just wanted to say, woo woo, this energy's here and it's applicable and it's here right now. And it can be really spectacular if you really tie into it. And Anita's sending Michelle Peterson healing. Thank you. Yeah, I think Caddo Lake is the one that's a natural lake. Because that's the one that's in East Texas. Now that y'all are going to know more about Texas by the end of this. Wait a minute. And I'm going to put Findhorn's information up again so you can go look for it. It's really spelled like Findhorn, but the Scottish don't say the D. I just have to read through the rest of the things. Hi, Dozen Cats. Michigan. Oh, she's having I have a love affair with a beautiful dragonfly. Yeah, they're gorgeous. They're just gorgeous. And okay, I'm almost talked out, guys. If you have a real question, for sure, yeah, do hit thumbs up for my garden. I gained over 100 members last month, new subscribers, which is wonderful. If you're not subscribed yet, please go over and make sure you are, because every once in a while, YouTube is YouTube, and we don't exactly know why things happen. I'm going to be going immediately after this. I'm going to go get my hair cut again because my hairdresser did something weird. And every day I wake up and the back of my hair is like sticking out behind my ears. I can't stand it. So we're gonna have words and figure it out. What else is going on? Like I said, I'm going to get a hold of Tim Walter. I did get a report back. Remember Brian Kilpatrick, who was here, about attaching to trees, sensing the spirit of trees. A woman was very lovely and wrote us a lovely note to both of us. And apparently she has a big olive tree in her backyard. And that's when she sit on it's the pretty tree. It's the unique tree. So she went out in the backyard and she was sure that was going to be her spirit tree. And she put her hands, like you said, putting palms down, but towards the tree, and concentrated and said, "Are you my spirit tree?" And she said she literally felt, thank you, Cold Toes. She literally felt she'd been pushed backwards. So she was like, but the other message she got when she was pushed backwards, there is a tree in this yard for you. So she went, and the back of her property is a very tall, stately tree. She said, I don't even know what its species is. So I went up to it and I went, okay, are you my spirit tree? And she said, she's absolutely drawn into it. The next thing she knew, she was holding on to its bark. And so now she knows what tree to go out and talk to. And she didn't have to go far afield, guys. Not at all. But I'm going to continue to dig up info about all the different elementals. And I'm going to continue to do readings for you if you want. And working with my crystals and my stones. I have 2 grids to finish now. And other than that, I'm just going to go enjoy the rest of my Tuesday. And I want you to all enjoy yours. You have a good day. Bye. And it takes about a minute for the broadcast